and welcome to the Happier Marriage Podcast, a podcast for spouses longing to have a happier marriage so they can feel more connected, desired, and supported. Now, to start the show, here is your host and Sherpa, licensed marriage and family therapist and certified relationship coach, Kingsley Grant.
Thanks for joining me on the Happier Marriage Secrets podcast, the podcast where we share insights, practical tips, and strategic actions for married Christian professionals who are looking to strengthen their intimacy, deepen their connection, honor God, and ultimately have a happier marriage. And this is episode 46. And I have another powerful episode for you. This episode is entitled, Stop Talking and Start Listening: How to Improve Your Marriage Communication Skills. Now, in today's episode, we will be discussing the importance of listening skills for better communication in your marriage. I can tell you, this is one of the biggest issues that I have seen and heard from couples who have come to see me over the many, many years that I'm in this field as a licensed marriage and family therapist and also a relationship coach. I have heard from them when they first come in, the issue is we just don't communicate, or our communication sucks, or our communication is less to be desired, right? So I've heard many variants of that, but this is a big issue for many couples. And I would probably say maybe in your relationship, you would say it's true as well. Now, many couples struggle with the issue of communication. And often this is because they just don't feel heard or understood by their partner. And you may be nodding your head and agreeing because that may be your experience, right? I know, I've seen it, I've heard it, I've just mentioned to you. Now, learning and implementing good listening skills, right? Putting good listening skills into action can go a very long way in improving your marriage. I guarantee that if you can have better communication in your relationship, really good at communication. I'm not talking about just talking. That's why I say stop talking and start listening, because some people think that because they're talking, they're communicating. That is not true communication. That's just talking and hearing, but not true deep listening. And we're going to unpack some of that in this episode today. Now, if you want to create a deeper sense of connection with your partner, you will want to listen and truly begin to implement one or two of these, of all the three things I'll share with you later on in this episode about how you can do this. Now, some people may disagree with me on the idea of communication, but I hope you're not one of them. For example, some people may say, as couples, we already know how to communicate effectively in our marriage. I'm saying, okay, and how's that going? How's that working out? Because if you're able to communicate effectively, you should have less conflict. You should have less issues in your relationship. I can tell you, I guarantee that. So some couples may feel that they have already mastered communication in their marriage and they don't need any further guidance or improvement. So they may feel like, you may even, I hope this is not you, but some, not you, may feel like this episode is not even relevant. Why even spend a whole 20 minutes or so talking about this issue, right? Another objections that may be out there, I've heard, is we don't have time to practice these listening skills. We just don't have time. We're too busy. Really? We just don't have time to practice active listening. We don't have time to practice other communication techniques you're going to talk about. And they need, what they're looking for is quick and easy solutions to their communication issues. My friend, this is a learned skill. This is something that you practice and you keep on practicing. It's not like, let's flip the switch and there you go. Now it's all better. It's not, that's not how it works. And you don't want it to work that way anyway, because you want to have habits and skills and build muscles, so to speak, around this. And number three, I've heard, and you may have heard this as well, we have deeper problems in our marriage that listening skills won't solve. Our problems are so deep and so terrible and so bad. I don't have time to listen. I don't have time to be doing communication skills. Really? Isn't that one of the reasons why you probably need to spend some time practicing these skills? Because your communication issues stem from deeper problems. For example, lack of trust, infidelity, incompatible issues, or values that you're experiencing. And so you're thinking that, or that person, not you, may be thinking that improving their skills, their listening skills, and want to address those underlying issues. Really? So what else would? How are you going to be able to unpack some of those deeper issues? So these are the issues that we're going to try to tackle today in this episode, and see why it's so important to stop talking and start listening. How to improve your marriage communication skills, while at the same time, we're going to explore some of these objections you've heard me mention. We're going to kind of unpack that as well. Now, why might you want to take some time to implement the skills I'll be talking about in a few minutes? Well, first thing is you're going to have better communication. And when you have better communication, it leads to deeper connection, right? Because when you feel heard and understood by your partner, what happens? It creates a sense of closeness, right? And it strengthens the sense of intimacy, which are two essential ingredients in every marriage, right? Closeness or deeper connection and intimacy are critical. So better communication leads to that, what you really need. Number two, it helps you to avoid misunderstandings. Because when you're implementing these good listening skills, what's going to happen is you're going to avoid misunderstandings and miscommunications. Those are the things that leads to conflict and resentment. So it's going to help you to avoid misunderstandings. That, of course, that leads to, not only better communication, but it lessens and reduces and possibly eliminate the resentment and conflict that you're having in your relationship. And number three, why it's important to implement these skills I'll be sharing is that it'll strengthen your trust. It strengthens trust within the relationship. Because when you show your partner that you're listening to them, you're taking their thoughts and their feelings seriously, when they feel listened to, guess what's going to happen? It's going to strengthen the trust that you have between you and your partner, and create a stronger foundation for your marriage. So these are not reasons why you want to listen to this episode and truly implement. I don't know what else can do. I don't know what else will work, or what else to help you with. Now, I want to share with you a brief story, and I'm going to try to kind of, mix up my episode this way. So I want to share a brief story with you right up front. And you'll hear me mention these names that I've made up. They're fictitious names. They're not real people, but fictitious names. But I think the story reflects real relationships issues that are happening in marriages often. Now, these names are Sarah and John. Now, Sarah and John are sitting on the couch, right? They're sitting on the couch and they're discussing their plans for the weekend. Now, the kids were in their rooms doing their own thing. So Sarah and John just decided to have this conversation. And she was telling John about how much she was looking forward to going to the concert with her girlfriends, right? This concert that was coming up. She had tickets. She was excited, and she was telling John, and the excitement in her voice was unparalleled. It's unparalleled. It was right there. You could not miss it. And she was reminding John, right, number one, about what's happening, but also wanted to share with him the excitement and the moment with him. But John seemed distracted. I mean, he seemed disinterested. Why? Because as Sarah was talking, John was checking his phone, and he only responded with a few grunts and nods. Sounds familiar? Now, Sarah felt hurt and frustrated, and she started to argue with John, accusing him of not caring about her interests. Here are 3 questions I want to throw up front, and we'll answer these questions at the tail end of this episode. The first question is this: should Sarah be accusing John of not caring? Now, you may want to pause and think about this. Should she be accusing him of not caring? Number 2, is it true that John doesn't care? Number 3, was John listening to Sarah? Now, we'll answer these questions after discussing the three important communication skills that I have for you in this episode. But I would like for you to kind of wrestle with that and see what your answers would be, and we can compare answers when I get to that point. Now, before I share with you the 3 ways to improve your communication skills, I'm asking you to do what I call a spousal honor, meaning doing something to show your appreciation for getting this incredible value from each episode, all for free. Now, the spousal honor is taking a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on the platform, preferably Apple, on which you're listening to this podcast. Now, that is the least you can do in return, and I hope you'll agree with that. To not miss any episodes that's coming out, subscribe to the show today. And if you have missed any of the past episodes, let me strongly encourage you to bookmark this podcast and go to happiermarriagesecrets.com, happiermarriagesecrets.com, and there you can access all the past episodes at your heart's content. Now, if this is the first time you're listening to me, let me say this. You may or may not agree with all that you hear. And quite frankly, I don't expect you to. Why? Because I believe you're smart enough to figure some things out on your own, and some things I'm going to help you with. So you might be triggered by some of what you'll hear. But remember, that is one of the purpose of this show, to stir things up and then take you in for a solid landing. And you can always share your thoughts through commenting on the social media, or send me a DM on any other social media platform that you so choose. I'll be more than happy to hear from you, and maybe we can have a conversation, and possibly I can answer a question you may have to ask on a future episode of this podcast. Now, this show is brought to you by KingsleyGrant.com, KingsleyGrant.com, where you can find other services that are offered there, and also products that are produced that are there. And our hope is that you'll be challenged, inspired, and encouraged in this episode as in every other episode. So stay tuned.
So, the big question is this: how is it possible that you have a happier marriage when you feel like you've tried everything? Your spouse isn't making an effort. You're exhausted. You feel like giving up. Or there's so much hurt that's taken place between you and your spouse. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the Happier Marriage world? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage podcast. And today, as you've heard, we're discussing Stop Talking and Start Listening, how to improve your marriage communication skills. Now, just to remind you that you can also watch video episodes of topics like this one on my YouTube channel. And if you go to kingsleygrant.com/YouTube, you can have access to those videos as well, and shorts. But when you go there, my friend, can I ask you to do 3 quick things? Smash that subscribe button. If you like what you hear, hit the like button, and also click on the notification bell so you'll be notified of any episode when they are released on the platform. And you can also watch the shorter versions of many of the videos I do there on my YouTube Shorts. So go in and consume, and just sit back and, at your heart's content, watch and listen. And you can also comment there as well. Again, let me simply say thanks for joining me for this episode. As you've heard so many times, we're going to talk about Stop Talking and Start Listening, how to improve your marriage communication skills. Now, here are 3 things I want to share with you about how to do this. You may have heard 1 or 2 of these, or maybe not, but it's worth talking about because I think they are very important, and they are the heart of communication. Number 1, you want to practice active listening. Practice active listening. This means giving your full attention to your partner when they are speaking. Now, as I go through this, keep in mind John and Sarah's story I shared with you at the beginning, right? So practice active listening. The question is, was John practicing active listening? And I won't answer this yet. I'm just going to ask this question, and you can decide. And as you track with me, what would your answer be? See, was he giving full attention to Sarah when she was speaking? Was he focusing on what she was saying? And did he ask, based on what you heard, any clarifying questions. These are very fundamental issues about when you're actively listening. You want to be making eye contact. You want to make sure that you are giving your partner his or her full attention. You want to make sure that you're focusing on what they're saying. And one of those ways to make certain that you've heard and they know that you've listened is to ask clarifying questions, to make certain that what they're saying is what you're hearing. And the way to do that is to ask for clarified questions. So the first thing is practice active listening. The second thing is avoid interrupting. Oh, I can't tell you how many couples I've worked with as a marriage and family therapist and as a relationship coach about how this happens so often. You know, that one will say, they're finishing my sentence. I can't even finish my sentence. They jump in and they finishing my question or my sentence by even answering before I'm finished. Interrupting your partner can make them feel disrespected and unheard, and rightly so, right? So you got to make a conscious effort to let them finish their thoughts before responding. And just don't listen to respond, meaning that you're listening just to jump in and give your point, but you have not asked for clarification. You've not acknowledged, you've not shown your partner that you've truly heard him or her. So avoid interrupting. Restrain that temptation. And I know sometimes you may be hearing things that you're just chomping at the bits. You just can't wait to jump in because you want to say, it's not so. That's not how it went. That's not what it's, right? You want to interrupt because you feel like as if you need to clarify. You need to straighten him or her out because they're not saying what they should be saying. Sounds familiar? So you've got to restrain. This is the aspect of self-discipline. And I love what the Bible says, that God says, He's giving you a spirit of self-control, right? So God has given us the ability to control ourselves. We don't have to rush. We don't have to interrupt. I love also what James in the Bible says, be swift to hear, slow to speak. I mean, don't interrupt. Listen, swift to hear, slow to speak, because when you're speaking because you're upset or triggered, you're trying to get an outcome that the Bible says you will not get. You will not get because it says that does not produce the righteousness of God. So the righteous thing you want, the right behavior, it's not going to get that because you're interrupting the whole process. So be slow to speak. Be swift to hear and slow to speak. Don't interrupt. Avoid interrupting your partner. And number 3, use reflective listening. Reflective listening. Now this technique involves truly a recognition of listening, because you're going to speak back, repeat back what your partner is saying, not verbatim, not word for word, right? I've heard a couple, one person was saying, you didn't listen to me. And they asked, why did you say I didn't listen to you? Because you didn't say word for word what I said. Come on. Who can? Does the person want him to have a recorder going on and just play the recorder back? Why not? Why would he need the person to even respond if you're asking them for word? Just play a recorder back and you can get the effect of that. You want the person to have their own autonomy and to listen and on independence and their own free will to think about certain things. And so they should process what they're hearing and as best as they can repeat back what they've heard to ensure that they've understood what their partner is saying. And if there's any reason why you think that he or she did not get it right, take responsibility. Maybe it's you who are not saying what you ought to say the correct way. Maybe you did not deliver the message correctly, right? But also maybe your partner heard something that they thought they heard, and you can have a chance to correct that, right? Because again, you're working in unison. You're working together with your partner to have an outcome that is better for the relationship. Okay, you want to make sure that, you've understood what your partner is saying correctly. And you're showing them that you're engaging in their conversation. Reflective listening is so important. And this is why some people don't want to practice effective communication, or I would say empathic communication, because it takes work. It requires discipline. It requires intentionality. It requires your attention. And some people have short attention span. They're distracted easily. They're addicted to their phone. And so they don't want to practice because it's what it's going to require of them. Now, these three things, the skill sets I want to go over quickly, mention them, and then go into Sarah and John's story and see what we come up with. Now, again, practice active listening. Did John practice that when Sarah was speaking? Avoid interrupting is number 2. Well, there's no indication that he interrupted her, because we're going to get to that in a few minutes. And number 3, use reflective listening. So again, the story is Sarah and John again sitting on the couch discussing their plans for the weekend, as you heard. And Sarah was excitedly telling John about the weekend and her girlfriends going to the concert. And as you heard, John seemed distracted and disinterested. Why? Because he was checking his phone constantly, and all the dings going off, the notifications going on. And it was just so he could not avoid, or he could, but he just chose not to. And he responds only with grunts and nods. So the question is, should Sarah be accusing John of not caring? Well, here's my answer to that. I think that's a far stretch for Sarah to say John doesn't care, because he seemed disinterested and distracted. Now, if there have been a pattern of John behaving this way, then I think that she could say he, again, is only confirming what her suspicion or what she believed, that John is uncaring, because this is one more thing that proves to her that he doesn't care, right? But just to take this one isolated incident and make a story that he does not care, I believe is a far stretch, and too many couples do that. And they label that behavior as not caring, and they'll just go ahead with that. And because it's not caring, they think that person is unloving and doesn't love them, doesn't care about them. And that could be the farthest thing from the truth, right? So that is what I would say. It could be a far stretch, but she could have something to say if this had been John's behavior time and time again. Now, is it true that John doesn't care? Again, I've made the case that this is not enough to say John does not care. John may not necessarily be so excited about what's happening, because he may not have been. What if Sarah had gone ahead and gotten the tickets and did not even consult with John, didn't talk to him about it, didn't somehow before she bought the ticket, had a conversation to make sure that, this was an okay thing, not to get permission from John per se, but to say that, is it something that he had planned? What if he had something else planned and now he's upset that she went ahead and just did her own thing? So does it mean that he doesn't care? I don't think it's really this one isolated incident would mean he does not care. However, as I said before, it could be to Sarah confirm that he doesn't, because it's been a pattern of behavior. The third question was John listening to Sarah? Based upon what you've heard, what I've just taught, would you say he was listening? The answer is no. He was not listening effectively. Was he hearing her? Yes, possibly. And I'm just assuming that I would say, let's just say he heard her. He heard her, what she was saying. That's why he grunted and nodded, but he was not actively listening. Why? Did he ask any reflective question? We didn't see any follow-up for clarity. We didn't see him paying any, for example, was he actively listening? We didn't see him paying attention to her. Was there any eye contact? It could not be if he's looking at his phone. So we know that this is not this is not what communication is all about. This is not effective communication. And this is where John could really take some, hopefully, lesson from this podcast and change some things about what he does. And also Sarah could be a bit more, not being so quick to judge and run to judgment that he doesn't care and is accusing him of not caring about her interests. That's a strong call on her part that could also lead to more argument and conflict, because John is saying, what do you mean I don't care? What are you talking about? Of course I do care. And now they start arguing about caring versus not caring. And so the topic at hand gets shelved, and now there's other things that are now being discussed, right? So if John had been practicing good listening skills, he would have given Sarah his full attention, asked her questions to show that he was engaged, as you've heard in what I presented. engage in the conversation, right? So his lack of interest and distraction, it created a communication breakdown, right? You would agree with that, wouldn't you? And it led to a conflict between the couple because now Sarah is upset and she's mad and she's accusing him of not caring. Now, if John and Sarah could implement these good listening skills, I would say in this case, John, the arguments could have been avoided, and basically he could have shown his excitement, and that could have deepened their connection with each other at that moment. So it's missed an opportune time, John. Come on, get with it, man. You got to represent. Get with it. Okay, next time, make sure you do. Having listened to this podcast, John, I know you're going to do best. I know you're going to do better. Now, I know that some couples, maybe you and your wife, find it difficult to communicate on things outside of work, the kids, and maybe the weather. That's basically the essence of your communication, your conversations. And it's not because it's a fault of yours or your spouse. It just means that maybe you just don't know what else to talk about. You go on a date, you're on your phones because you just don't have a conversation to do. And I've seen and heard this so many times. And because of that, I decided to come up with an idea that solves that problem. And so I created the Connect Strong conversational cards for couples. And what it is a deck of cards that have questions and prompts that allows you to talk about other topics and really become more to practice communication skills, right? Like what you experienced and heard today. It allows you to practice those skills and talk about things more than just your kids, work, and the weather. Not that those are not important, but you want to talk more about deeper things as well. Now, you can have a real conversation in fun and meaningful ways with this deck of cards, and it leads to a deeper connection and a stronger sense of intimacy. And you can have access to your own pack, your own deck, by going to kingsleygrant.com/cards, kingsleygrant.com/cards. And currently, as of this episode, I'm offering a $10 discount. Why? Because it's new and it's not yet on Amazon, but once it gets on Amazon, we're going to pull the discount and it will be no longer available. It's full price from that point on, includes shipping and handling. So you have an opportunity to get $10 off right now, and half your shipping and handling fee you would pay, again, by going to kingsleygrant.com/cards. Get yours today, and all you'll need to know is on that page. Now, let's kind of summarize what on our topics today, and that is stop talking and start listening, how to improve your marriage communication skills. I suggest that you do 3 things. Practice active listening, avoid interrupting, use reflective listening. Now, I'd like to know your thoughts of anything we've covered today from start of the show to this point. And you can always send me a DM or an IG, Instagram or Facebook. Let me know what, and if you have any question you may want to ask, you can also ask it there as well. So thanks again for listening. And the announcer will tell you how to get a free gift just for staying to the end. Now let's make marriages happier again.
We've come to the end of another exciting show, and if you enjoyed this podcast, 1, make sure you give this show a rating and review. 2, subscribe to the show to get all new releases. And 3, get your complimentary copy of the 5 Secrets to a Happier Marriage ebook at kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. Again, it's kingsleygrant.com/HMS ebook. See the link in the show notes. Do it today. Don't delay. Thanks so much for listening, and make sure you tell one other spouse about this show, or better yet, share it with them. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May he turn his face toward you and give you his peace, both now and forever.